Hi, it's John, and welcome to the channel, 5:35 a.m., Sunday, January 26th, with the big blue mug of coffee. I hope you're having a great day today. Little follow-up from yesterday when I said I want Mark Carney to become Michael Ignatieff 2.0. It was in a video where we were talking about Justin Trudeau being 2.0. Fascinating. So many people were saying that yesterday online. There's actually a story in the National Post today similar to that. Fascinating as well that I had a clip from Dan McTeague from Canadians for Affordable Energy on yesterday, bashing Mark Carney, and people seem to have Dan McTeague on yesterday doing the same thing. Maybe I'm a trendsetter. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Who knows? But good to have McTeague on because he's certainly a good guess. Now, who is Michael Ignatieff and how is he similar to Mark Carney? Well, it's really quite fascinating that these two guys have some parallel. Now, Ignatieff was actually elected as an MP back in 2006 for the riding of Etobicoke Lakeshore, ran to become the leader of the Liberal Party, but lost to Stéphane Dion. Dion stepped down late 2008. He became the interim leader, and then with 97% of the vote on May 2nd, 2009, Michael Ignatieff was chosen as the leader of the Liberal Party. Exactly 2 years to the day later, he got trounced by Stephen Harper in the election, winning only 34 seats with the Liberal Party, their biggest defeat in history. Up to this point, it could be worse this time, and he quit as the Liberal leader the next day. Now, Michael Ignatieff, very educated man, much like Mark Carney, lots of letters behind his name is Michael Ignatieff. Again, a parallel with Mark Carney here. And if you look at his education that you see right here, University of Toronto, Oxford, and Harvard University with a PhD. But people were talking about Michael Ignatieff at the time, much like they're talking about Mark Carney as a savior of the Liberal Party in deep, deep trouble. And the parallels are quite fascinating here. If you look at this article from the CBC going back many years ago, they talk about him being greeted with breathless profiles in national publications. As Canadian journalist and biographer John Gray wrote for CBCnews.ca in the run-up to the 2006 Liberal leadership, Ignatieff was not only the preferred candidate of the Liberal establishment, but someone they thought of as the new Trudeau. Isn't that amazing? The new Trudeau, and here we are replacing another Trudeau a little over a decade later. Is really quite amazing. Whatever the candidate may have thought, his supporters wanted to believe that Ignatieff was the dashing outsider who would rescue the Liberal Party in its hour of need, much like Mark Carney is right now. From the CBC, it did not take Ignatieff's opponents long, for example, to discover his past speeches. Much like Mark Carney, everything he has said is on record, and journalism, in which he assiduously identified himself as an American. He talked and wrote of we, us, our way of life, our Constitution, and our leaders. He even went so far as to say being an American is not easy. Ignatieff spent all of his time outside of the United States. He was a presenter on CBC, and then he went to the United States and became a professor at Harvard. Now, what are they doing with Mark Carney? The Conservatives are already trying to cash in on something he said about being a European, and they've used it in one of their attack ads.
Mark Carney is back from Europe.
Speaking as a European.
Carney hasn't spent much time in Canada at all. He's trying to portray himself as an outsider, but he's an insider in a big way, as many people have written. He was made a special advisor on the economy for Trudeau back in September, I believe it was, of last year. Trudeau's been trying to recruit him into the party for a very long time, and he's been pulling the strings from behind the scenes for sure. And then the thing that I've been saying about Carney is the fact that he probably has that one advantage over a lot of the other people in the party. Your Chrystia Freelands and the rest of the people, all of the Liberals are actually running. The people who have been elected have the baggage of being a Liberal. They have the baggage of the poor economy. They have the baggage of being connected with Justin Trudeau. And boy, there's a parallel there with Michael Ignatieff. Going back to the CBC story, as the Globe and Mail's Jeffrey Simpson wrote of Ignatieff's initial leadership bid, he has the fewest Canadian scars by virtue of having fought the fewest battles in his own country, a fact that in other countries would almost automatically disqualify anyone from serious leadership ambitions, but that in this country, at least inside the weakened Liberal Party, has apparently become an advantage. There's this as well from the National Observer. Comparisons to Michael Ignatieff, who led the Liberals from 2008 to 2011, are far from flattering, but perhaps more than fair. Ignatieff has plenty of expertise and capacity too. He was also a terrible politician and capable of meeting the moment. He led the Liberals to 34 seats in the 2011 election, paving the way for Justin Trudeau to replace him. The Liberals, of course, have looked for saviors before, much like they're doing right now with Mark Carney. An article from Yahoo News, this taking us way back to 2012, talking about John Turner, who was supposed to be a savior back in the 80s. Paul Martin as well, best known as the finance minister under Jean Chrétien, the prime minister for a short period. And then came Michael Ignatieff, the man some Liberals described as the next Pierre Trudeau, and certainly he was not that. Ignatieff, an intellect, eloquent and charismatic, and early on drew big crowds across the country after a series of Conservative Party attack ads leveled against him. However, he led the party to new lows, winning only 34 seats and 19% of the popular vote in 2011. I don't think that Mark Carney is very charismatic at all. I think he's kind of a dud when it comes to that. He's certainly no politician. And Ignatieff had time to learn from 2006 when he was first elected as an MP to the time he actually became the leader of the Liberal Party. So he learned how to be a politician. Mark Carney has got none of that. Drawing big crowds across the country, I don't think so. He was actually out on Saturday afternoon with a little get-together with some Liberal faithful, swarmed by the media afterwards, and he seemed to run away.
You're the outsider, but it looks like the party establishment is lining up behind you.
C'est une question the issue of deputies, elected members, ministers, others, Liberals across the country who are making a choice and are making a choice about the importance of the economy, the importance of coming together, building together. That's a free choice. This is the Liberal Party. We believe in freedom and we believe in good judgment, and thus far, Liberals are showing.
As for Michael Ignatieff, the great savior before the election in 2011, Liberals only won 34 seats, a record low for them at the time, which could, that record could fall with Mark Carney being the next leader. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Brian Lilly wrote an article about this last year, May 15th, 2024. Ghost of Iggy haunts the Liberals and Mark Carney's ambition. Some Liberals think Mark Carney is the next great savior of the Liberal Party. They should look at what Michael Ignatieff is up to lately. I'll get to that in just a moment. A little bit from Lilly's article here. Some in the Liberal Party thought that the bright, well-read, and well-spoken Ignatieff would make a great prime minister one day. Perhaps he would have, but one thing stood in his way. Voters never warmed to him, and you have to wonder if people are going to warm to Mark Carney. He hasn't got a lot of time. Ignatieff was born in Toronto. His father was Canadian diplomat George Ignatieff, and his uncle was George Grant, the professor, intellectual, and author of Lament for a Nation. The younger Ignatieff went to all the best schools, had a distinguished academic and media career, most of it abroad, but he simply couldn't connect with voters. When I hear Liberals today pushing the idea that Mark Carney is the savior of the Liberal Party once Justin Trudeau steps down, I think of an Ignatieff, and that's exactly what I thought of when I heard Mark Carney was getting into the race. I thought back to Michael Ignatieff. And so what will happen to Mark Carney? Well, first, what happened to Michael Ignatieff? He just basically disappeared off the face of the earth. He went directly back to the United States and went back to his previous life. And here's what he's doing right now. He was recently the rector and president of Central European University in Budapest, stepped down at the end of July 2021 to stay as professor in the history department. What will Mark Carney do? Well, you have to look at it this way. Carney's really got nothing to lose. He's got everything to win if he could happen to become the prime minister and win the next election, which I think is doubtful. But he's not hungry like Pierre Poilievre. Poilievre has been working to this point his whole life, and he's got lots of plans for the country. I mean, he became an MP back in 2004, and he's been doing this for 20 years. As far as Mark Carney, what's he going to do? He's just going to leave the country, probably go back to doom and gloom predictions about the world and make more money being a businessman. That's what Mark Carney is going to do. So I think it's interesting that these two men have very interesting parallels. Maybe not their political careers, but I think Mark Carney is even more in the back foot because he hasn't even been elected yet. And that's something that needs to be looked into when we have him named the prime minister, which I think is going to happen because he is the outsider, and I don't think the other Liberals have a chance, including Chrystia Freeland. Now, one more thing before I go, I've been thinking about Doug Ford is expected to call an election next week. I'm wondering how this is going to take the wind out of the sails of the Liberal Party leadership race if Doug Ford calls an election next week. So it could be a good thing that Ford's doing after a lot of bad things he's been doing when it's talking about tariffs and the United States. Just a question I was thinking about. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. I do appreciate it. And, well, I'll see you in the next one.